Inebriated, she confessed, I was never attracted to you, and I cannot cease seeing other men. Her words struck me with the force of a slap. As she lost consciousness, I reached my conclusion. At dawn, I disappeared without leaving notes or farewells. My name is Philip, and I have consistently held the belief that diligent effort can resolve nearly any issue. It is simply a reflection of my upbringing. You focus intently on your work, and subsequently, all other aspects align accordingly. That mentality significantly influenced my life, particularly about my marriage. For as long as I can recall, my days have been a haze of meetings, deadlines, and transactions. I exerted considerable effort, rising early and laboring throughout the day. Upon arriving home, I was too fatigued to engage in anything beyond bidding my wife evening. However, I reassured myself that it was all worthwhile. I was constructing a life for us, ensuring she would never have to concern herself with anything. During my non-working hours, she occupied my thoughts entirely. How to ensure her happiness and provide her with the life she merits. I would present her with things throughout my business travels. I would organize weekend excursions to compensate for lost time. It was never ideal, although I believed she comprehended. Love is not predicated on perfection, rather, it involves presence and effort. At least that was my assumption. Upon reflection, I recognize that I may have erred, albeit I was unaware of it at the time. I believed that exerting greater effort equated to deeper affection. Recently, however, circumstances had seemed amiss. She scarcely recognized my presence any longer. Initially, I dismissed it. We had been married for merely 2 years. I assumed we were only acclimating to the cadence of married life. Inherently, I recognized that something was off, yet I was reluctant to accept it. I reassured myself that she was merely experiencing stress, fatigue, or a transient phase. I believed that by exerting further effort and demonstrating my affection, the situation would revert to its previous state. I believed that love and effort could resolve any issue. I was mistaken. Inaccurate. Upon recognizing the tension between us, I resolved to take action. I believed a romantic supper may facilitate our reconnection. I may have been naive, but I had faith in the endeavor. I devoted the entire afternoon to preparation. I prepared her preferred dish, chicken parmesan accompanied by garlic mashed potatoes, a recipe I had not executed since our initial date. I arranged the table with candles, adjusted the lighting appropriately, and selected a playlist of her favorite soft, mellow songs. It was my method of expressing, I acknowledge your presence, I long for you, and I am making an effort. Upon entering, she appeared astonished. Impressive. She remarked, surveying her surroundings, her gaze settling on the table. For a brief moment, I perceived a glimmer of something, perhaps gratitude. She bestowed a kiss upon my cheek, took a seat, and grinned. We commenced dining, and the dialogue proceeded effortlessly and amiably. She praised the cuisine, jested that I was clandestinely a superior cook, and for the first time in months, she laughed authentically. At that point, I contemplated the possibility of retracing our steps. However, following her third drink of alcohol, the situation deteriorated rapidly. She was inebriated. Initially, it was understated. She reclined in her chair, her demeanor relaxing, her speech becoming softer and more unrestrained. I paid little attention until she placed her drink down, gazed at me, and remarked, "You are a nice guy. You ensure my well-being. That is the reason I am present with you." I became immobilized. "What is your meaning?" I inquired, my tone unwavering, despite the turmoil in my stomach. She laughed gently, albeit with a trace of condescension. "I have never been drawn to you. Not in that manner." Her words struck me with the force of a freight train, yet she continued. She inclined her body forward, supporting her chin on her hand as if narrating a casual anecdote. "You possess kindness, tenderness, and a sense of security, but you do not align with my preferences." She began to delineate her preference, an individual with a rugged demeanor, a darker aura, and a willingness to defy conventions. The antithesis of my character. Subsequently, as if the situation were not already dire, she revealed the shocking news. Upon encountering him, my ideal, I found myself unable to resist. One event precipitated another, and she faltered, although I did not require her to conclude. I comprehended her statement. I remained seated, acquiescing foolishly, as my wife divulged revelations that devastated me. My chest felt constricted, impeding my ability to breathe, although I maintained a composed expression. Externally, I appeared composed, while internally, something within me fractured. This was not an apology. It was not even remorse. It was a drunken rationale, as though she sought to elucidate her motives for betraying me. At that point, I recognized that I did not need to raise my voice. I had no necessity to engage in combat. I merely required her to complete her statement before determining the subsequent course of action. As I retired for the night, I recognized that there was no possibility of reversal. Her words incessantly echoed in my mind. Her lack of attraction to me, her continued association due to my amiability, and her pursuit of fulfillment elsewhere. The betrayal was not the sole source of pain. Her nonchalant admission was striking. Reclining in the darkness, attuned to her gentle snores, I experienced no wrath, but clarity. Engaging in conflict with her would yield no significant outcome. She had already shown her true self to me, and I accepted it as truth. Confronting her would merely provide her with the gratification of rationalizing her actions. She was undeserving of that treatment. She was undeserving of a confrontation. She was unworthy of closure. She warranted an understanding of the implications of existence devoid of my presence. By dawn, I had reached my choice. I would not be present when she awakened. I am not a person who acts impulsively. When I perform, I do so with exactitude. That morning, I departed the house as usual, softly and intentionally, exhibiting no indication of anything amiss. This time, I would not return. The initial call I made was to my attorney. I instructed him to draft the divorce documents and incorporate all necessary elements to facilitate my separation from her. I subsequently contacted my accountant. He was astute, and within hours, he was liquidating my interests in our co-owned investments. At the conclusion of the day, my accounts were depleted, and I possessed complete authority over my assets. I subsequently contacted my family. I did not provide them with all the particulars. I made one thing unequivocally plain, while not being required to do so. Do not engage with her. Please refrain from disclosing my whereabouts. If she contacts you, disclose no information. I desired her to experience the gravity of her actions without any support to soften the impact. I ultimately left a message with my lawyer to convey to her when she inevitably attempted to contact me. She will receive the divorce papers shortly. No elucidations. No apologies will be offered. The stark, unembellished truth of her losses. Several weeks later, the documents were delivered. My lawyer informed me that she attempted to contact him through calls, emails, and even by visiting his workplace. I refrained from responding. She implored for clarification. What could I possibly articulate that she was not already aware of? Initially, she was reluctant to endorse the documents. She exhibited reluctance, lagging behind. Perhaps she believed she could restore our relationship, or she simply wished to retain the steadiness I offered. However, when reviewing the financial deal, she capitulated. I was not astonished when she affixed her signature. Ultimately, she consistently favored her own interests. Thus, the chapter concluded. When I exited that marriage, I did not contemplate the consequences for her. I sought liberation from her deceit, her disdain, and her utter disregard for my humanity. I concluded that she should pursue the life she desires. For a period, it appeared that she did. Initially, she appeared to relish her new existence. She was liberated, unattached, and financially stable due to the settlement. I exerted considerable effort to establish a foundation for us, and she received her portion upon our divorce. She began to socialize more frequently, immersing herself in her customary diversions, including nightlife, new attire, and, naturally, new romantic interests. I heard she even jested about finally living the life she merited. However, the salient point regarding individuals of her ilk is as follows. They fail to consider the future. She believed that freedom entailed acting without regard for consequences. Life does not operate in that manner. Ultimately, it confronts you. One of those liberties significantly impacted her. She became pregnant. I learned through a common acquaintance who was unable to refrain from sharing the rumor. It appears that it was not a premeditated event. I do not anticipate it to be so. Is it the father? He disappeared the once she informed him. No communications, no messages, nothing. Merely departed. She was abandoned to confront it independently. Moreover, it did not cease at that point. What is the amount of the settlement funds? She consumed it effortlessly. By the time the infant arrived, she was in substantial debt. She was compelled to sell our former residence. At that juncture, her residence. It was the final remnant of our common existence. Subsequently, there remained her pals, or what was left of them. Individuals like her consistently draw similar types of individuals. Superficial, self-serving, and present solely during enjoyable circumstances. As she began soliciting assistance, financial support, childcare, and emotional solace, they gradually vanished, one after another. It seems that even her finest narratives could no longer captivate them. She attained what she believed she desired, freedom. However, such freedom incurs a cost. She forfeited all that was significant due to her initial lack of appreciation. The veracity. I did not empathize with her. I was not seated, conspiring and reveling in her misfortune either. I simply lacked concern. She was a concluded chapter in my life. Some individuals believe they are evading a situation when, in fact, they are heading directly into an obstacle. That was she. She sprinted, and upon colliding with the wall, no one remained to support her. Years had elapsed. My life progressed not in a flamboyant, dramatic manner, but rather slowly and steadily. It was not flawless, yet it belonged to me. Subsequently, one day she discovered me. I was at home, seated by the window with a book, when the doorbell rang. I was not anticipating any visitors, yet upon opening the door, there she stood. She appeared unchanged, not unattractive, composed, and exuding the confidence I previously liked. Her gaze locked upon mine, unwavering and probing, as though attempting to assess my response. Encountering her once more elicited only a frigid, subdued indifference within me. I was unaware of how she located me. All I experienced was revulsion. She remained stationary for a minute, gazing at me as though anticipating authorization to articulate. I did not provide it. Ultimately, she commenced speaking without awaiting further consent. Her voice faltered as she articulated her words. "For years, I have sought you," she said, her voice subdued and trembling. "I must express my profound apologies. I committed an error, a grave error, for which I have endured consequences daily since." She hesitated, anticipating my response, however I remained silent. I reclined against the entrance door, observing her writhe. She continued, her hands quivering as she clutched them together, expressing her belief that she could get everything. "I believed I could seek exhilaration elsewhere while retaining you. However, I was mistaken. I failed to appreciate what I possessed until it was lost." Her words emerged, frantic and disordered. She recounted the disintegration of her life, characterized by unsuccessful romances, financial burdens, and profound solitude. She acknowledged that she was left in a state of pregnancy and solitude. She gazed at me, tears cascading down her cheeks, and implored, "Please, I require your assistance. I have consistently required your presence." I inclined my body forward, establishing eye contact with her. I aimed to ensure she comprehended that this was not a dialogue, it marked the conclusion of one. "You have made your decision," I stated, my tone composed yet resolute. "You were never drawn to me, recall. I did not align with your preferences, therefore seek out someone who does and ascertain if he desires you today." She recoiled as though my words had physically assaulted her. However, I did not cease my efforts at that point. "Your regrets are of no concern to me. Your suffering is of no concern to me. That is your responsibility to bear, not mine. Do not ever present yourself to me again." I retreated, shut the door, and departed without hesitation. I required neither her explanations, nor her apologies, nor her remorse. That chapter of my life had concluded, and there was no justification for revisiting it. As I departed, I contemplated the individual I had evolved into. The loss of her was excruciating. It had fragmented me in ways I had not realized were possible. However, it compelled me to reconstruct. I am still in the process of reconstruction. Occasionally, the most profound gift you can bestow onto a betrayer is your absence. Occasionally, the most beneficial action for oneself is to depart and refrain from revisiting the past. In her absence, I discovered my true self. I recognized that this was the sole closure I would ever require. If you were in my position, what actions would you have taken? Contemplate it for a moment. You have just endured a dinner intended to rekindle the romance in your marriage, only for your wife, the lady you pledged to spend your life with, to inform you, amidst sips of wine, that you do not align with her preferences. She audaciously laughed and recounted her involvement with other men without your knowledge. What actions would you undertake? Would you remain and contend for an individual who does not appreciate you? Or would you depart? I am not here to dictate what is good or wrong. However, I would like to impart a lesson I have acquired from difficult experiences. Should you encounter a scenario comparable to mine, wherein someone demonstrates a lack of respect for you or your affection, it is imperative to cease making justifications for their behavior. Do not allow their absence of gratitude to undermine your self-esteem. Individuals will treat you according to the boundaries you establish. If they can trample you once, they will do so again, and the situation will only deteriorate over time. Departing is challenging, I understand that. It is excruciating. It is disorganized. Initially, it is solitary. However, it is essential to consider the long-term implications. You may be apprehensive about the consequences that follow. Apprehensive about initiating anew the experience of solitude. However, allow me to convey something to you. Solitude is much preferable than companionship that induces feelings of inadequacy. Upon departing from an individual who fails to recognize that you have facilitated the opportunity for improvement, even if that enhancement merely entails achieving inner tranquility. Thank you for your viewership.